Alright, so this is going to be my submission for assignment number 7 for Fundamentals of Game Engine Design. And this assignment was all about NVIDIA physics and incorporating it into one of our projects, and doing collisions and all that other fun stuff. So for this assignment, I went back to working on more on this little shooter game I've been messing around with, and adding physics to it. So as per the previous assignments, on the left we have our client instance, and on the right we have our host instance. And as per usual, I muted the client instance of the program because, it wants to hear it twice. So for this assignment, I was trying to change how the shooter game is played. Previously, when you would shoot a projectile, it would fly in a straight line. And I wanted to mess with gravity because, we're in space and why not? So now the projectiles no longer fly in a straight line. You'll see that they kind of curve around and move in kind of seems to be apparently random directions. My goal for this was to try and get this little dark sphere to kind of be like a black hole and kind of generate that kind of effect. But I was not quite able to get it to look like that. If we shoot near it, it kind of looks like it. It's kind of believable. However, if we shoot along an axis, that's when things start to get a little funky. But essentially what I ended up trying to do was mess with the gravity constants. So to make this happen, in each quadrant of this, if you think about it like a grid, a grid split by the x-axis, y-axis, and z-axis, we have a total of 8 quadrants, 4 in positive z and 4 in negative z. And each quadrant, I assigned a specific scene, an NVIDIA physics scene, and each scene has its own gravity constant. And I went ahead and tested on each frame if the sphere has passed from one quadrant to the next and moved it into the relevant scene to apply the correct physics. Ideally, between these two instances, the physics should look identical. However, these two instances do process their own physics. I don't just process it on the host machine and send the orientation and location information to the client. I thought it might be a little bit more interesting to try and get them both processing the physics on their own. Ideally, they should both be the same because all that I transmit back and forth is the projectile locations. And with those, as long as the location is the same and the mass is the same and the forces applied to each sphere are the same, they should, in theory, reflect each other. And that is what I've seen through all of this practice and working with this. Either way, the heads are not for their actual physics body. The heads are boxes and the little projectiles are spheres. None of them are actual are meshes. There's one more thing I should cover really quick about how the projectiles and the targets actually collide. You notice these heads, they are not affected by the gravity, and that's because they're in their own scene, and that scene doesn't have gravity, because I wanted to make it a bit easier to hit them, and I didn't want them flying all over the place. So what I do is that previously I had my own method of hit detection. I calculated a hitbox for each head and checked each frame if the projectile had entered into that hitbox. With physics, I was kind of hoping to be able to get rid of that, but with these objects being in their separate scenes, these projectiles being in scenes that have gravity and these heads being in different scenes that don't have gravity, they won't interact with each other because to physics, they're in separate scenes and they shouldn't interact. So what I did was I allow physics to drive the location of the sphere, and I still have my same old update script that will check if the sphere is within that hitbox that I calculate. And if it is, I then move the sphere from the scene that it's in, which is the one with gravity, into the scene that the head is in, and that's the scene without gravity. That's why if you watch really closely, it seems like the sphere kind of acts a little odd when it hits the head. Sometimes it's fine, like that was pretty believable, but I've seen a couple instances where it gets stuck between two heads and it kind of floats in place, but that's just because it's getting stuck in that, getting set into that, that scene without gravity. But because of that, I had to make a couple changes to the generation controller. We are able to control how many heads and targets we are able, or that we want. And the main changes came with the target controller. So now when you select a target, you really only get visibility. Either way, only a couple small changes to the GUI. And that about covers everything for this project. Thanks for watching.